I sang this Ava Brothers song for my beloved friend, mentor, and companion, Paula, who also happened to be my mother-in-law. Her body was no longer holding her because of advanced pancreatic cancer. In our home where she chose to live her final days, she was held by her family and friends, as well as her ancestors, whose presence she felt. Together, we held the grief, joy, and sorrow of her dying. It was the first time I had been so intimately involved in walking a loved one home. Paula invited me into her process of letting go. I watched as she gradually released all the roles she identified with in her life: a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a sister, a therapist, roles that involved her giving so much to others, at times at the expense of her own well-being. As she sloughed off any lingering self-consciousness or self-doubt, she seemed to fully receive, unapologetically, all the love and care that was offered to her during her experience of dying. Paula wasn't eager to leave this life. In fact, she held the possibility of a miracle, a spontaneous remission of her cancer. But in the end, she didn't resist letting go of it either, as her body finally let her free. Paula's legacy lives on in the hearts of many whose lives she touched, including her grandchildren, pictured here at her green burial, seated next to her adorned and shrouded body. I can still hear Paula. She loved to say, "We are spiritual beings having a human experience." All of us know on some level that we will no longer inhabit these bodies one day. The mere mention of death may evoke a range of feelings within us: uneasiness, anxiety, detachment, or even disinterest. It can also ignite curiosity and awe, fascination with the mystery. Whatever emotions arise, observing them and allowing them in offers valuable insight into our own perspectives on this season of our lives. In my life, I have witnessed thousands of individuals navigate the process of their dying. First, as a hospice volunteer when I was a student at Davidson College, and later as a hospice doctor and end-of-life doula. Now I'm the founder and director of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, offering community-supported end-of-life care and experiential engagement. I have seen that our dying process, our dying experience, whether it's sudden, distressing, anticipated, or peaceful, creates ripples through the tapestry of interconnected lives. How we meet the moment of our final breath, how we die, matters. Few of us consider dying an experience, one that we can prepare for over the course of our lives, and one that can be supported by our community. Many of us are so removed from death. We haven't learned the practical and emotional skills or the spiritual and cultural traditions to tend to someone during this time, let alone ourselves when our time comes. One reason for this is that with advancements in modern medicine, the care for those dying has been entrusted to healthcare professionals. What was once a communal, relational experience is now a medical event. The field of hospice and palliative medicine emerged in the 1960s within the healthcare system to address overly medicalized dying and to offer a more compassionate and holistic approach to end-of-life care. The field has come a long way. However, we often access this care late in the dying process, which limits our ability to fully benefit from all the services provided. Also, the majority of caregiving still rests on families, friends, and other networks of care. So combine the lack of exposure to the dying process with the dread of dying itself and the uncertainty of what happens at the moment of death, and we amplify the fear of it. It is natural to have fear, but our response to that fear often leads to an avoidance and at times denial of death's presence in our lives. This can result in us missing precious moments in life. I have seen the impact of this fear, personally and professionally, in homes and in institutions. Our dying processes can become prolonged and highly medicalized, using aggressive medical interventions to sustain life in attempt to avoid death, and oftentimes lonely, even when we're surrounded by others, because of a lack of acknowledgement of the nearness of death. Our families and caregivers can feel disempowered, unequipped, burdened, confused as to how to offer care, and overwhelmed with grief and emotions, keeping them from being fully present with us. What if it doesn't have to be this way? What if we could reimagine the dying process to be as supported and as authentic as Paula's? We can move to a place, individually and collectively, where dying isn't something we pity, cause for disappointment accompanied by a sense of failure, an experience we ignore and deny until we have no choice but to look at it. We can return to a place where dying is deeply acknowledged as an inherent part of this life, integral to our evolution, no matter how surreal or how intense the accompanying emotions, an experience we can practice for throughout our lives. This shift in our modern approach to death and dying is possible and is underway. The impetus for this is not coming from our medical system, but rather from individuals and communities. In fact, this shift actually begins with each one of us individually. It begins with me. It begins with you. As you explore your relationship to death and prepare for this inevitable journey, what you find will be deeply personal. Though death is the great equalizer, your responses to your own mortality are shaped by your diverse life experiences, circumstances, and beliefs. When I speak of preparation for death, I'm not just referring to advance directives, wills, estate planning, or funeral arrangements, though all of those things are important. I'm actually talking about cultivating a relationship with yourself and deepening your understanding of who you are. What I have recognized in my lifelong work of turning towards death is that every moment of my life is now informed by it. My awareness of death enriches my relationships to myself and others, reminds me to take chances, and compels me to live a life full of love and service. 2 ways to begin to value death and bring it back into life include becoming aware of the small d deaths in life and observing your responses and reactions to them, and engaging with death, dying, and grief in community. Throughout your lifetime, you experience multiple transitions and changes, thresholds where you let go of who you were or thought you were and embrace who you are becoming, who you are. Life is an ocean of constant change, as seen in Mother Nature with cycles of birth, life, death, and rebirth. If you think about it, a part of you dies when you leave your childhood home and set out on your own, when you begin or end a relationship, when you retire, when your parents die. A part of you dies as your body ages and you become more dependent on others. You can pay attention to how you respond to these types of changes in life and remain curious about your human experience. How comfortable are you with these types of deaths in life? How much do you cling to that which is temporary? How much resistance do you have to these types of transitions? And how do you mark these transitions? You may begin to notice that you are practicing for death in your living days, moving towards more acceptance of what is, relaxing into the discomfort, and dying before you die, becoming more familiar with what it feels like to surrender and let go, just like Paula did in her dying days. You can ask yourself, what part of me has remained consistent and unwavering throughout all these transitions in my life? What is that essence? By connecting with that essence, the part of you that is the one being, not the one doing, you will begin the process of acceptance of death as part of life. By allowing the death of all that is not that essence, you will continue to evolve and grow in your understanding and experience of life itself. You will then realize that engaging with death is engaging with life. The process of letting go and shedding layers of that which is not the essence of us may take a lifetime because of our conditioning, our traumas, and our life experiences. Surrendering to these many small d deaths can be supported, as has been for centuries, through music, art, dance, literature, spiritual teachings, plant medicine, meditation, ritual, and ceremony. As we continue to accept death as part of life, we may start to revel in the mystery and become fascinated and in awe that we even exist at all. We then can explore the thing that so many of us fear. We engage with death, dying, and grief by having conversations about our experiences of the deaths in our lives, by participating in the arts, by listening to others' stories about death, near death, and shared death experiences, by learning from other cultures about death practices and rituals, and by observing our own beliefs and understandings, as well as conditioned thinking about death and dying. And we do not have to do this all alone. I had the honor of supporting a 36-year-old man, Ethan Sisser, while he was dying from the effects of a brain tumor, a glioblastoma, a journey that's captured in a documentary called The Last Ecstatic Days. In it, he says, with a whisper, "Does dying have to be a solitary experience? What if what we call dying can be a communal experience?" Throughout much of human history, death, dying, and grief have been held by the village. Currently, communities from around the globe, from varied geographies around the globe, including here in Asheville, are challenging norms and rules about caring for dying people and models of citizen and cooperative action, such as compassionate cities, are emerging. In the early stages of the Center for Conscious Living and Dying, as we unite to support individuals in their dying process, we are experiencing a vibrancy and cultivation of authentic community. As it turns out, life becomes richer when we communally transcend the fear of death and support all the ways it shows up in our lives. And still, the work of community made up of individuals requires honesty, self-reflection, and contemplation for those who are a part of it. In community, we have an opportunity to have all the parts of ourselves, including those we often want to hide, reflected back to us as we evolve and grow. It can be so intense. Truth. And it is so worthwhile. As we return to a way of being with death and dying that is so old it looks new, returning to community-supported models for caring for one another, we as individuals will increase our exposure to death, evolve in our understanding of our interconnectedness and interdependence, and cultivate the skills necessary to support one another as we become more aware of the thin veil between life and death. As we continue on our personal journeys, connecting to our own essence, we will collectively move towards more balance and wholeness in each moment, in our personal relationships, in our communities, and in relation to our planet, Mother Earth. I will close with lines from a song by Kabir, a 15th century Indian mystic poet. The translation is, "I am a bird from a foreign land, my dear, not from here. Where I come from, one would sing without a mouth, walk without feet, and fly without wings. My identity is one who is unattached, who is constantly engaged in divine pursuit. May the vibrations of this melody and the harmonium, an Indian instrument, carry you in our remaining transient and precious moments together."